Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be the repeat, rewind book tag.
I should have told you that I loved you one more time.
I was tagged to this book tag by Kelly from the Velvet Library, so I'll have her channel linked down below, as well as the creator of the tag, whose name I can't remember right now because I never research my videos properly. But the premise of this tag and the rules basically are that you take your repeat rewind playlist from Spotify, or if you use like Google Music or Apple Music or some other program, it's supposed to be an auto-generated playlist of songs that you listen to frequently or that you have listened to frequently in the past. So Spotify has on repeat, which is songs that you're like currently listening to a lot, compiled into one playlist, and then repeat rewind, which is songs that you used to listen to a lot, but you've sort of fallen off listening to. The whole idea is that you're just using a playlist that you didn't make, but that someone else generated for you based on songs that you're familiar with and that you've listened to a lot. You take the first 10 songs from that playlist and you pick a prompt to go along with the song that fits in some way, and then you pick a book that matches the prompt that you chose for that song. The other big rule is that you can't use multiple songs from the same artist. I think Kelly had to go onto her on repeat playlist after she did her repeat rewind playlist because like she'd been listening to full albums and that was what was on there. I didn't have to do that, but you can switch to another automatically generated playlist or whatever if you run out of songs on your repeat rewind. Again, I did not have to do that, but I know Kelly had to do that, so it is allowed. The final rule is that you pick one song from the person who tagged you's video that you have not listened to before. You listen to that song and then you pick a prompt based on that and you pick a book based on that prompt. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into my 10 songs. The first song that was on my repeat rewind playlist was Unfuck the World by Angel Olsen. This is a song about someone who is, sounds like she's coming out of a relationship that she sort of thought or convinced herself was going to be the end-all be-all relationship for her, and it just wasn't. So for this, I picked a book with a character who falls in love with someone who's wrong for them, and I chose Sense and Sensibility because I actually just buddy read this with my friend Amanda from her Pacific Northwest Washington life. I'll have her Instagram and YouTube linked down below, and we have a live show, so I'll link that in the eye and down below in case you want to watch that, where we talked about all of our feelings and thoughts on Sense and Sensibility. We are currently buddy reading all of Jane Austen's work in publication date order for the entirety of 2021. We're skipping a month between, so we're not reading anything in March, but in April we will be reading Pride and Prejudice. If you would like to join us in that, please let me know. I will link the video where I announced my Jane Austen read-along down below. So again, if you would like to join us on that journey and buddy read with us, or just read the books on your own and join us for the live shows, either way, we would love to have you. This is basically, it's Jane Austen's first published novel, and it's about sisters Marianne and Eleanor Dashwood. At the beginning of the book, their father dies, and so they are no longer able to live in their home. They have to move to the countryside to a relative's cottage, and they both are of marrying age, so they have their coming outs, and then they're both sort of dealing with their romantic prospects, I suppose, and marriage prospects, but they have two entirely different ways of looking at things. That's one of them is sensible, and the other one, sensibility, is like floofiness, I think. The other one's very floofy and very emotional and very emotionally driven, whereas Eleanor is much more cut and dry, sensible about things, and understands that things happen for a reason. But because of her floofiness, as I like to call it, Marianne sort of has a run-in where she falls for the wrong guy, and she finds out that he's not exactly who she thought he was. The second song on my repeat rewind playlist was Black Boys on Mopeds by Sinead O'Connor, and this is a song from the 90s, I think, and it's about civil unrest in England and police brutality in England at that time, specifically police brutality towards Black men. It also talks about the way that the government treats poor people and other things that cause civil unrest, and Sinead O'Connor's sort of view on those things. But I just thought it was very interesting that police brutality and things like that are not a new conversation that people are having. It seems like every generation has to come back and assert that it's still a problem. But it has been a problem for a really long time. And so for this, the prompt that I chose is a book about civil unrest. And I chose When They Call You a Terrorist by Patrisse Khankahlers because it is the memoir of Patrisse Khankahlers, who is the one of the founding members of the Black Lives Matter movement. She grew up in Southern California. She is Black, she's queer, and she talks about her experiences with the police in her life. She has an older brother who's mentally ill, and he is a felon, and she talks about in her memoir how the police react to a mentally ill black man and how that contrasts with how the police historically have interacted with white men like Dylan Roof who shoot up churches, and then later come back to say that they were mentally ill, and that's why, not that it was okay, but they are more lenient because of those factors, whereas those factors don't help black men, they actually tend to harm them. So that's a really powerful memoir that I would highly recommend to anyone, and she talks a bit about her introduction into activism and how she sort of got involved in activism from a really young age and why. And so I think it's a pretty impactful book for high school students to read, especially the YA version, which is the version that I read. There's also an adult version, which I have not read, but I imagine it probably focuses on more of her adult life, whereas the YA one does focus a lot on her being younger, because it's geared towards a younger audience. The third song that was on my repeat rewind playlist is God is a Woman by Ariana Grande, and I'm sure everyone has heard this song. I chose the prompt, a book with the trope of gods among men, just because I really enjoy that in books, and that's something that I hadn't really explored prior to about last year. And for this, I chose the book The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which is actually a Greek mythology retelling. It's a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of Briseis. I don't know how her name is pronounced. I feel like I look it up every time and I can never remember. But she was basically Achilles' wife, who was enslaved during the Trojan War when her city in Troy was sacked. The whole book is about the women who were left behind in the Trojan War, just the atrocities that they went through. The fourth song on this playlist was Raising Hell by Kesha, which is just like a party anthem. The chorus is, I don't want to go to heaven without raising hell. So it's just about how Kesha's here to have a good time. Not here for a long time, here for a good time, which I think is very on brand for Kesha. We love that. We love to see it. But for this, I decided to go with the prompt, a book that's just fun. And I actually picked All Your Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. This is a YA mystery thriller about a group of high school seniors who are invited to a scholarship dinner by like a mysterious patron of sorts, and then they arrive and they find out that they're actually locked in the basement of this restaurant, and they have a set amount of time to pick one of them to be sacrificed or they all die because there's a bomb there. It seems very high stakes, and I know you're probably thinking like, how is any of that fun? But it's just the way that this was written. And for me, like, mystery thrillers are fun. They're, like, what I go to when I want my brain to be stimulated, but I'm not trying to, like, delve into, like, a fantasy world where I'm gonna have to remember a bunch of stuff, or, like, I'm not in the mood for sci-fi. I feel like I can always be in the mood for a good old, especially a YA mystery thriller. So this book is a lot of fun, and it's got a lot of twists and turns, and I remember being shocked by the ending. I don't know if it's shocking to everybody, but I was very surprised by who the, like, culprit and who like locked them all in there and organized all of it. And it's fun because you get to have like flashbacks into who each of these people are and like why they're in this room together, and so you sort of get to piece together what's going on. The fifth song that was on my playlist was the explicit version of Ali and AJ's Potential Breakup Song. I feel like I waited, God, however long that song's been out, I've been waiting for them to release a version where Ali Michalka says fuck. So we finally got it, boys and girls. It's here. And for this, the prompt that I said was a nostalgic read, because that song originally came out when I was a kid, and so having it be re-released in an explicit version was very nostalgic, brought up a lot of nostalgic feelings for me. So I chose All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han, and if you've been on this channel for the last like 3 months, then you know that I've recently become obsessed with this book series. What's so funny is that the movies came out when I was a grown woman, and I didn't read these books until I was 25. And yet, they feel so nostalgic, and they have such a place in my heart now that I think this series will become like a comfort thing for me. Definitely the movies are. Anytime I'm feeling like a little low, I will watch the original All the Boys I Loved Before movie, which is still my favorite one of the films. I recently did a book versus movie review of the third book and the third film. I do really, really love this series. Did you hear that? I think that was our Google Home. That really scared the crap out of me. But my heart is pounding. I don't know why I'm scared. It's like the middle of the day. Like, there's no reason to be upset. But anyways, yes, this is such a good book. Highly recommend. The sixth song on my playlist was Funeral by Phoebe Bridgers, which is about a funeral. So it's Phoebe Bridgers' song about having to go to a funeral of someone her own age, and sort of the way that strikes a chord in somebody. the first time somebody my age died that I knew was horrifying. I think I was 19 or 20. And it's just like a harrowing experience to have someone you know die. Just because you especially when you're young, you don't feel like you're not old enough to die. And so the song's about that, but it's also about Phoebe Bridgers pretty openly struggles with anxiety and depression, and how she felt so guilty for still having depression, knowing that someone's kid has died, and she is having a hard time getting out of bed in the morning when none of this has happened to her. So it's a very good song. It's a very sad song. So for that reason, I chose the prompt, a book that makes you cry. And I picked Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This book is about a young boy. I can't even remember his name. It's been years since I've read this, but I'm probably due for a reread, honestly. I might just rewatch the movie too. Emma Watson's in the movie, and so I think it's Logan Lerman, I think is who the main character is. This book is very short. I think I read it in a day when I was in high school, and it's about a high school freshman or sophomore, and one of his good friends, or his only friend, died right before the start of this book, and so he's dealing with that trauma, and he's also dealing with some childhood trauma that sort of gets unveiled throughout the book. But this just really is a book about being in high school, figuring out who you are, and then how to make friends, because he's trying to make friends with these new people, how to deal with your first romantic feelings. This book is really heartbreaking, but it's so good, and I would highly recommend it. Look into content warnings before you read this, though, because I have a feeling it could be very triggering for someone if you're triggered by things. Always look into content warnings. You probably already do, but definitely for this book, there definitely are some. The 7th song on my playlist was A Vision by Rat Boys, which is off of their most recent release, A Printer's Devil, or The Printer's Devil. I can't remember if it's A or the. I get my articles mixed up. But this was one of my favorite releases of 2020, actually. And it's an entire album sort of about Julia Steiner, who's the front woman of Rat Boys. Her childhood home was sold in either 2019 or 2020, around the time she was writing this album. And so she was sort of going through, I don't know if everybody feels this way. My parents moved when I was an adult out of my childhood home, and it's still weird going to visit them now because they live somewhere that I've never lived. And I think a lot of the feelings you get when your parents tell you that they're selling your childhood home is that you can never go home again because your home's not there for you anymore. So the album is a lot about that, and about her realizing that she's at this crossroads in her life and she doesn't know what she wants to do. The whole album as like one cohesive work is very much about uncertainty and not knowing what you're doing with your life. Bearing that in mind, I came up with the prompt, a book that deals with uncertainty. And for this, I chose What Should Be Wild by Julia Fine, which is a fantasy novel about a girl, Maisie, who grew up with her dad and her caregiver, a woman who lives in their town and was her dad's maid and was her nanny and stuff like that. And Maisie is a cursed child, and she's from a long line of cursed women. So Maisie can't touch anything that's alive or has been alive, because if she touches a living thing, it dies. And if she touches a dead thing, it comes back to life. She's lived her whole life without physical contact, and her dad has been taking care of her. And then one day, her dad disappears. And so this book is about her having to go find him, but also it's about her not being sure what in her life has been true and what has been false, because so much of everything she knows has been taught to her by her dad. This is a really good book. I highly recommend it. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. The 8th song on this playlist was Bury Me by Duandita, which is a song. The lyrics are something to the effect of, I love you and I just want to be buried by you and by your love. Which to me, when I looked up the lyrics, I was like, that sounds a little crazy. So the prompt that I came up with for this one is a book about obsession. And the obvious choice was You. This is a book written in the second person about Joe Goldberg, or from the point of view of Joe Goldberg, about Beck, a woman who walks into the bookstore that he manages, and he becomes obsessed with her and starts stalking her. That's the premise. This book is so good. It's so scary. Yes, this is one of my favorite books of the year so far. I really, really, really loved this, and I would recommend it. I also love the TV show, so if you're not interested in reading this book, which I don't know why you watch a book channel if you're not interested in reading the books, but regardless, I'm not here to judge you. I would watch the show. It's so good. The 9th song on my playlist was Car by It Looks Sad. And this song is actually about someone mourning the loss of their car. It's about like the last road trip they took in their car before their car kind of crapped out. And for this, I chose the prompt, a book about a road trip or a journey, and I picked Lord of the Rings, primarily because I just read it. So as soon as I listened to the song Car, I was like, I could use Lord of the Rings for that. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows what the Lord of the Rings is. It's an epic high fantasy trilogy that basically should be looked at as one book. I have a reading blog where I read all of them in a weekend, and I'll link that, so if you want to watch my experience going through this. But it follows these hobbits who have this ring that has a lot of magical power, and they have to destroy the ring because it's destroying their world, basically. It's just the classic tale of good versus evil. The 10th song on my playlist was I'll Be Holding by Miel, and this song is really fun. It's like it makes me think of like, I keep hearing my dishwasher making a noise, and it's making my dog like flip out. Anyways, it's about it's a very nostalgic song to me, which I'm not going to use that prompt because I already used it, but it's sort of about like summer nights and like hanging out and being in the backseat of someone's car and just watching the city pass by. But it references several things in Austin, Texas. So I was really like scrambling for ideas at this point. And so I said that for this one, my prompt is a book that is set in Austin, Texas. And I picked Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi, which I read and thought was fine. It is set in Austin. It follows two perspectives. Penny is the girl's name, and I can't remember the boy's name, but it's Penny, and she is a freshman at college at the University of Texas in Austin. She has this freshman roommate who she thinks is really annoying, but the roommate introduces her to her ex-step-uncle, who is actually like only a few years older than them, but just they have this weird relationship because his mom married her grandpa. But that's how Penny meets this boy, and he manages a local coffee shop, which is very Austin if you know Austin. But one day Penny sees him right after they've met, and he's having like a panic attack or a heat stroke or something. And she gives him her phone number, and she puts him in her phone as her emergency and he puts her in his phone as his emergency contact. And then they basically like text and sort of develop this relationship. There's that if you're into that kind of thing, and like a flirty text relationship. And then for the extra song / prompt, one of the songs that Kelly had on her video that I had not listened to before was Anyway the Wind Blows from Hadestown. And I've had a Hadestown song show up on my Discover Weekly before, so I listened to that song, but I hadn't listened to the whole soundtrack. I keep meaning to, and then I just don't. But like I said, since I haven't listened to the whole musical, I don't know exactly what the song is about in the context of everything. But what I got from it is that it's about someone who is running away or trying to escape something. And if I'm wrong about that and that's not what the song is about, you can feel free to let me know down below. But for the prompt, I said a book that features a character that is running from their past. And I chose Nosferatu by Joe Hill, which was it was the highest rated book on Compile that I read last year. I don't know if it wasn't my favorite book, enjoyment-wise. I did get a 10 out of 10 on enjoyment, but there were some books that got 10 out of 10 out of enjoyment that I enjoyed more, and I do think that plays a bigger role into my overall rating of something. But this is a horror novel by Stephen King's son, Joe. I think Joe is his real first name. Hill is obviously not his real last name, but regardless, this book follows Vic McQueen, who is, Vic McQueen, and when she is a young child, she's like 12, she discovers that when she rides her bike over this bridge in her town, she gets transported to anywhere where she's, what am I trying to say? She gets transported somewhere else. It works as like a portal, but it takes her to something that someone has lost and that she is looking for. And then at one point, when she's a little bit older, she rides her bike across the bridge, going looking for trouble. And she meets this guy, Charles Manx, who has a similar type of, I guess, mechanism to travel by and to go through places. It's called an inscape. So Vic McQueen's bike and bridge combo is her inscape, and his is a black Rolls-Royce Wraith from the 30s. It's like an old school limo. And when he puts kids in the backseat of his limo, they can't get out. So he's a child abductor, and he takes them in his limo to this place called Christmas Land. where their souls are trapped forever, basically. And Vic McQueen becomes the only person to ever escape him. And so she spends most of her adult life running away from him. And this book, the first, like, probably quarter is about that. And then from there, it picks up, I think, probably 15 years later. And Vic has a 12-year-old son. And Charles Manx is coming back to go get her kid. And she has to protect him from what happened. This book is really good. It also has a TV show based on it. And I haven't watched it. But, yes, highly recommend the book. Yeah, she's running from Charles Manx, or rather her memories of that time. That is it for today's video. I think that was kind of a rough take, but we'll take it. Those are the 10 songs off of my repeat rewind playlist, and one song that I had not listened to before off of Kelly's playlist. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to, go ahead and comment down below your favorite songs from this list, or if you've read any of these books, let me know. I'm going to be tagging 3 people. I'm going to be tagging Hilary from Melted Books, Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, and Serena from the channel A Wandering Mind. I will have all of their channels linked down below if you want to go check them out as well. I would highly recommend it, as well as Kelly's channel and the video of the first tag, the original video of this tag. What am I trying to say? I don't really know. But anyways, that's it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like it if you did. Give me a follow if you would like to. All my social media is linked down below in case you want to follow me on any of those. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!
I should have told you that I loved you.